as we know, our culture, the way how we think, as we grow up, the information we receive, the stories that are told to us, all of this, it actually molds up our own way of thinking. There was something that came to my mind that I read some days ago, and something very simple, but it shows how we are easily conditioned. Why pink is a color for a girl and blue a color for a boy? Is it true or not true? When we look at pink, would we put a boy with pink? A girl with blue, maybe why not? It's not that bad, but a boy with pink, maybe it's a little bit more difficult. It depends, on our own way of thinking. Why, when this started? Why it came like this? This started around 1920s. Actually, until 1920, when color started to be available in society. Because before that, dyeing cloth was very expensive, so there was no such problem of what color children wear. Everyone wear the same color. Basically, because of the fact that there was no much possibility of getting actually cheaper cloth with dyeing. So everywhere, all the children always wear the same white, gray dress. It doesn't make much difference. Then we got to a point when actually it started to become available with the industrial age to have dyeing in the color. And then they started to choose. And actually in the beginning, in 1918, it was all the shops, the marketing was pink for boys and blue for girls. Because they said that pink was a stronger color, so it had more to do with boys, and blue was more soft, so it had more to do with girls. And then they sold like this in 2 years, and that became the fashion. Everyone was doing like that. Then 2 years later, in the 1920s, to make the market to move more, they chose, okay, let's make things upside down so that we make people to buy more. So they started to make the whole marketing of putting boys with blue and girls with pink. Okay? And now, how many years have passed? Almost 100 years have passed. And when we think about pink, what type of color comes to our mind? Boy or girl? Why? Because some people doing marketing chose it. And we stupidly followed. Okay? So, the point is that, what I want to say is that there are many, many little things in our life that we take for granted in our way of seeing, in our way of perceiving the world and existence, that actually are the result of simply ideas that other people had and they were transmitted to us, and we take it for granted and we simply follow it like that, without not even knowing that we are following it. Okay? So, until the problem is the fact, until we follow pink and blue, it's not that big deal. But when we start having very strong views regarding reality and the self and blame and so on, guilt and so many other things, then it starts to have a little bit more weight in our own life. Okay? So this just, I think, it's important for us to reflect upon. In the same way that 2-3 days ago we were talking about the spontaneous self-grasping. So for us the importance that we have is to observe our own self. The important then is there for us to observe our own mind and see, how do I perceive reality? How do I experience reality as being of inherent existence? This is something that is very important for us. No? So in the same way that it's important for us to see the spontaneous, it's also important for us to look and try to see what is actually our own constructed views. Where are they coming from? What are they? they are more difficult nowadays because they are not so much declared as before. Before it was, I am part of this philosophy, this is what I follow, this is what is taught. Nowadays we have many philosophies, many ways of seeing things, which are somehow more subtle, not really subtle, but how do you say in English? Subtle. Somehow tricky, the way how it comes. It's not so clear, it's not declared. So it's important for us just to, first of all, try to reflect a little bit upon that. Try to stop and think about, okay, what are the views that I have? What am I influenced by? Okay. So, the first thing is that the spontaneous view of whatever, in this specific case, the spontaneous view of the self, or the spontaneous wrong view of the self, it's spontaneous in the moment that it exists in the same way, independently of culture, place, and time. The constructed view is a view that is conditioned by culture, place, and time. And if we really stop to look, we are extremely conditioned by culture, place, and time. When we take this condition, these ways of seeing things for granted, and we take them for true, okay? And that's why also very often there is a strong arrogance between cultures. My view is right, your view is wrong. Why my view is right? Simply because it's mine. Okay? So all this part that is the constructed views, we can have right constructed views, wrong constructed views. They are right or wrong basically if they are coherent or they are not coherent. Okay? So, just to conclude the example I gave before when we talk about the pink and the blue. When we look at pink, if we see, let's say we see a little boy dressed up in pink, it may look strange for us. Okay? But when it looks strange, why does it look strange? Simply because pink is not a color for boys. Why? Because it's not. Okay? Can we see that we are conditioned but we are not aware of it? Okay. So, similar to that, there are many aspects in our life that we follow, but we do not really understand why and from where and so on. Someone may ask me, but why do we need to go through that? That's too complicated. Why don't we simply live our life and forget about all of this? No, everyone is free to do as you like, but what I think is that the moment that I start understanding from where I am conditioned to see things in one way or another, I find my own freedom. To be free from such conditions. I can share, I can choose what I like to follow, what I don't like to follow. If I want to follow pink and blue because I think that the guy there in the 1920s, he was correct in making this choice. And I like to follow this way, it's okay, I'm free to follow as I like, but at least be aware. Do not take things for granted in this manner. So, let's try to understand some aspects, because I think I'm sure I'm not able at this moment to go through every aspect of the condition of our constructed view of the self, constructed wrong view of the self according to our own culture. But some aspects I would like just to share. Okay? First of all, normally, okay, I'm generalizing here. We cannot talk on the specific of every one of us. But normally, most of us will say that we believe in science without really knowing what science is. It's true. Very often we say, oh, but scientifically it's proven, and we have no idea. We just say that it's like it's because someone told us. And if we look, for example, regarding the self, first of all, we are conditioned by a view in which we take for granted that with death everything ends. This is the common view. This is, if you are sane, you will see things like that. That's scientific. If you are a little bit, out of the line, if you're a little bit, how to say,
non-conformist.
I don't know which really word to see, but I think, for example, if you are in a very scientific community and you start talking about reincarnation, how are you seeing them? You are out of mind. Okay? Because you think you can exist out of this body, so basically there is something really wrong with you. Okay? So, we are conditioned by that. Okay? If we look in our own culture, the first thing when we talk about reincarnation is the idea that, okay, it could be, but maybe, and it's something related only to faith. While the fact that there is no reincarnation is something related to fact. But why? What are the, if we go to analyze it, there is no basis for this belief. There are no more facts of the non-existence of reincarnation than the existence of reincarnation. So, based on this, what happens is that it's important for us to see really where it comes from, this idea, these beliefs that we have. Okay. Secondly, there is a belief that we are also influenced by. Let's mean how to put it in a nice way. We are in our culture influenced by a monotheistic view a monotheistic view of a God creator of all, right? On which we were created by God, and what happens to us, good or bad, is a matter if we please or if we don't please our God. Okay? I'm not saying if you believe on that or if you don't believe on that. I'm not talking to the fact if this is right or if this is wrong. Okay? I'm not entering into that. Okay? Some people believe, some people don't believe, some people think it's right, other people think it's wrong. And I have nothing to do with that. Okay? My point is the fact that are we influenced by that view or not? Independent of the fact that we believe it or not. Yes. We see ourselves as victims. And we blame ourselves for what we do. So we have guilt one way. So instead of looking for our own resources, someone else must give it to me because I don't come from myself. I don't depend on myself. If things go bad or good for me, it's someone else that will decide it in a way. Okay? So I believe that when I look around and I talk to people and I observe and so on, I see an influence in our way of thinking that comes from this own culture also. That is something that we are not aware that we are influenced by it very often. But the way how we relate to ourselves, the way how we relate to situations, the way how we relate to people, the way how we see ourselves, if we see the sense of guilt that exists in this society, which is tremendous. Okay. All this is related to this image of the self, which is constructed. So one of the steps that Shantideva is doing here is to deconstruct the images, the wrong images of the self that we have constructed. Okay? It's not a simple process because they are culturally constructed since our childhood and our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and this is like deep inside our culture and the way how we grew up and the way how we learn to see the world. Okay? So it takes time. It's possible. It's much easier to eliminate a constructed view than a spontaneous view. But still, it's something that it takes work. But it's important for us to start looking at and understanding what are the influences that I have based on my own culture, time, and place. And one of them, I believe, is this view of ourselves being the result of the creation of someone else. And at the same time, blaming ourselves for what we do and what happened to us and so on. Not in the sense of being self-responsible, but in the sense of saying, I am the guilty because I'm being punished because of this or that. And this guilty sensation, which is very present very often, it comes, I believe, from a constructive view of the self that we accumulate and we create in time. Okay? I think it's quite clear, no? Then there are other aspects also that we need slowly to see, but this is, I think, another point which is very strong also and related to the constructed view of the self that we have. This, I think, is not very old. I think it's much more new. But nowadays we have a constructed view of the self which is very, very technical and very material and very mental. And that takes away a lot of parts of the emotions and the feelings and the perceptions of things. So it's like, I am not my emotions. There is even a name of a sickness for that, which is called, Dr. help me. When we don't know, we're not able to feel anymore our own feelings and emotions. Alexithymia, right? But this is a sickness that is a result of our own time. It's like of negating one's own emotions until you reach to a point where you even don't feel anymore your own emotions, as if they're not part of you. Okay? This is also, I believe, the result of a constructed view of the self, where emotions are not part of us, where we are only understanding, doing, functioning, being productive and so on. So all of this is slowly parts that constructed ideas of ourselves that we have accumulated in time. And we are a result of all of that, the way how we see ourselves. Okay? So, I just added nothing really important that was the same teacher, some little details more, but when we talk about science, no? The attitude that we have nowadays towards science is the same attitude that we always used to have towards religion. Believing it blindly. We follow it as following a dogma. Most of us have no idea about the scientific views. We cannot understand it at all. And still we take it for true. In our own lifetime, in our own experience, and in our own knowledge, many of us don't have much knowledge regarding that, but how many times have science said something and after shown that actually it was wrong and changed view? Did it ever happen?
Yes.
Tens of times? Hundreds of times? Thousands of times? Okay. So many times it happened that first say one thing, then after say something else. Okay? It's okay, because it's part of the process of knowledge and understanding and research. But we take for granted when he said something, because science said it. Like sometimes even to justify something that a Buddha taught, we say, scientifically it says like this. Then we feel more comfortable. Oh, even the science said that, so Buddha might be right.
Someone said something.
Yeah, but we feel more comfortable because that's our religion, That's what we blindly believe. But science itself, I'm not against science at all. I am very much in favor of the true science. And if anyone wants to go a little bit more deep on what I'm saying, there is a video by a friend of ours actually called Rupert Sheldrake. And this video, it's to find it, you just make a search on the internet, you make on YouTube, you do Rupert Sheldrake. It's a little bit more difficult to write, but you do Rupert banned video from TED. Okay, he was banned from TED. And in this video, he's talking about the dogmas of science. And it's very good, actually. The way how he's showing how we believe in things that actually are dogmas. One of the examples that he's giving by that is the speed of light. We take for granted that the speed of light is fixed, But there are actually places where they continuously measure, and they have, sometimes it came out some small difference. So, is it fixed? If there was some difference? No, but it cannot, no, the difference is not taken into consideration. Why? Because the speed of light is the speed of light. They're absolutes. Things that don't change, and that's how they are. So, anyhow, if you want to know more about it, look at it. The point is that I was remembering the Congress in Holland when the first time, and there was this moment where David Schreiber was showing this video talking about exactly the aspect of how science works and how often science, honestly, doesn't have really the best way of judging things. And he was giving the example of acupuncture. I remember this video, he showed this example where acupuncture is not scientifically proven. Why? Because scientifically, people are not able, scientists are not able to prove how it works. So he gave an example. They made one testing of acupuncture, one study, in which they took one point of acupuncture, which was on the left, if I remember well, on the side of the little finger of the left foot. Okay. And by putting a needle there, that was a point to stimulate the eyesight. So while they were doing the acupuncture, they were doing measurements of the brain, and they could see in the moment that the needle was put in the right point on the left little finger, the activity of the eyesight related to the brain became stronger. When they took the needle out, it became less. They put the needle on the other side, it didn't work. Okay? So what has this proven from my point of view? This has proven two things. One, it has proven that acupuncture works. But at the same time, it has proven our ignorance not being able to explain how. Instead, what is said normally? No, it's not proven because we don't know how. Okay. It's like talking on the phone to someone and saying, oh no, this is not the person that I'm listening to. Why? Because I cannot understand how the voice of that person is arriving here. Okay? So the point that I want to get is that there are many aspects that we take for granted, but actually are constructed. And very often they are made out of marketing. They are made out of people that have interest and they're inventing, so they have their own view that they constructed in a way and they pass by to us and we take it for granted and we follow it without even questioning ourselves. Yes, please.
No, I just want to say, I think it's maybe even worse, because so many treatments in Western medicine, we also don't know how they work. But these we accept because of the conditioning.
This is what you're saying is regarding some years ago when they opened the clinical trials.
Yeah.
What Rohir is telling, if I just explain better for everyone, is that some years ago in the United States, whenever a medicine is put into the market, it must go under trials, clinical trials, to see if the medicine works or not, right? And what happened is that for many years, the result of all these trials, they were kept secretly. But people were not allowed to have access to it. And then after some years ago, after many people making causes and so on, court cases, it was open, and some independent scientists started to analyze all the data. And the result that came out is that for most of the, I don't know if it's for all or for most of the...
Well, it depends, especially for antidepressants, they found out it was like a bias. Only the positive studies were published and the other ones were kept secret. When you look at all of them, the effect of antidepressants was like many tens of percents lower than we always thought it was.
Yeah, so I just repeat for the other people there. Is the fact that when they checked for the antidepressants, all these medicines, which here comes a connection with what I said before, Italian also, they saw that of all the trials that were given, if we took into consideration all the trials that happened, not only the ones that were published, actually there is almost no difference between the actual medicine and the placebo effect. Okay? So, this is showing what? That we are using medicines without actually having any proof that it exists, that it functions. Why? Because we are conditioned to the fact that they function. And on this, it comes what I said before. This year I got some meds that made me shocked. In Brazil, there is one medicine called Rivotril. And in 2007, it sold 30,000 boxes. In 2010, it sold 10 million boxes. So this shows actually all the marketing that is behind and everything and how much we become conditioned to that. And the point that I want to get is that, you know, we believe in reality in a way. We follow things. Why? Because someone told us and there is a beautiful marketing behind. And that's what we believe and so on, and that's what it becomes. The same thing happens with the news. The same thing happens with many other things. Okay? But the point is that all of these conditions, the way how we see reality, the way how we see other people, the way how we see ourselves, so many aspects out of that. So it's important for us to understand what conditions us, and if it's positive, if it's negative. And this helps us to open our mind to see so many things that we take for granted that it should be in this way. Now, it's like the same thing when you look, I made the example of dressing of blue and pink. The same thing is like boys or men using a skirt or a dress. Until a short time ago, in the beginning of the 90s, boys would use dresses. Because it was easier to move, cheaper to do, easier to wash. So, you know, even when I was reading about that, there was this picture of President Roosevelt as a kid wearing a dress. But if you go to a kid nowadays and you put him a dress, oh, that's not possible, there is something wrong with it. Oh, the boy's going to have some problem later. Okay. So what I want to say is that we are conditioned by things, by culture, by the place where we grow, by the things that people teach us, the way how things are shown to us. So it's important for us to understand how I am conditioned in relation to the way how I see myself and the way how I see reality. We need to reflect upon that. We need to go. And it's not a process that we do from one day to the other. It takes time. But in the moment that we understand it, oh, here I think like this because that person taught me this, because I'm conditioned by that, we can free ourselves from this. And we can see, I can see things in one way or in another, and both of them are fine. It depends what I choose. Things are not so solid as they seem to us. Okay? So now we go back to the text, which is actually a debate between constructed views of the time of Buddha and the time of Shantideva later. Prego, Claudio.
I have one question. The only main difference between Kunta and Lenkie is that Kunta can be changed easily. Lenkie is almost impossible to change. No? I think this is the basic difference between the two egos, let's say.
Yeah, there is this what in Tibetan is called Kuntak.
Yeah.
Kun means old, Tak means projected. It's completely projected. And Lenkie means spontaneously born. The difference, we have this in all the mental defilements. There is the spontaneous aspect and the constructed aspect of it. The constructed aspect is much easier to change. Okay, and that's the first thing. The spontaneous aspect, it's the process of developing, of changing the spontaneous aspect of an emotion or a view is a non-conceptual process. We need to have deep experiences of the opposite way of apprehending, of the spontaneous way or wrong way of apprehending, so that we can change it. Okay. That's why to eliminate a constructed wrong view, we can do that through analysis and reflection and so on. To eliminate a spontaneous wrong view, we can only do it through meditation. There's no other way. Okay. Well, we are on verse 68. And it says, verse 68 and 69. It's another school called the Mahayana Buddhism, which says, furthermore, something lacking intention cannot be a self, as the Mahayana Buddhism asserts, because of its nature of lack of intention, just like a vase and such things. Now, suppose you claimed it's cognizant because of a conjunction with an intention. Then it absurdly follows that this non-cognizant self has perished. And if the self were in fact unchanging, what could have been done to it through a connection with an intention? Moreover, space is non-cognizant and inert like that, so it as well could become a self. What does that mean? There is this school that asserts that the self, it's something that we possess, that is inside us. Not that we possess, but that is inside us, that is permanent, unchanging, somehow pure, that is not, it's always been there, it's always going to be there, and that's the true self that is inside of us. It's not the mind because it possesses the mind and the body. Okay? It's a little bit similar to the view that we have been seeing before on the spontaneous wrong view of the self. When we look to our own selves and we think, do I have a body and a mind? And the answer that comes is yes, it's my body and my mind. So if I have a body and a mind, where is the self that possesses the body and the mind? Find it. Look for it, but you won't find it. If you really look well. Okay? While not looking for it, you'll find it. When you really look for it, you cannot find it. Okay? So what happens is that we live with this experience that we exist independent of body and mind, that we possess body and mind. Because whenever there is a relation of object of possession and possessor, the one that possesses inevitably must exist independently of the object of possession. Okay. So this is what's happened when we talk about possessing a body and a mind. And we see that this is not possible. Actually, we do not exist independently of body and mind. We are composed by body and mind, but we do not exist independently of body and mind. Okay. Even when we die, there is two bodies. Anyhow, this school, for me, it looks like trying to justify somehow and explain this existence independent of body and mind. So they are giving a whole explanation about it, saying that the actual self, when we really go to look, where is the self? Oh, the self is deep within you, and it's something that never changes, that is permanent, that is there, that possesses the body and the mind. Okay? So then the Madhyamika are saying, well then, how can actually the person, how can actually the being perceive anything if it is a non-cognizer, if it's just, it's not a mind? Then it says the self can perceive things because it possesses a mind. So through the mind, it can perceive anything. Then it comes and say, okay, but then, strangely, in the moment that the self perceives anything, automatically the self ceases to exist. Why? Because it's permanent. And then it's not anymore permanent, so it's not anymore the self. Because it changes. Before it was not cognizing, then after it's cognizing. Before it was not perceiving anything, then later it's perceiving something. When I look at the glass, the mind is seeing the glass. But is myself perceiving the glass also or not? Am I perceiving the glass? Yes. So in the moment that I perceive the glass, and I perceive the glass because this hypothetically existing permanent self can perceive things through the actual mind, so it's not more permanent because it's perceiving things. It's changing object of perception and so on and so on. So automatically it's not possible for it to be a permanent self. Okay? So this is basically what these two verses are saying. Now we continue on, because there are some, I don't want to take too long on this verse because there are some other parts which are really very nice. Okay? Now we enter one part, which is very interesting also, but it's the part in which actually the Madhyamika is answering questions and objections that are made to it. Okay? And the first one here we start on verse number 17. Suppose you then objected, but without the true existence of a static self, the connection between behavioral cause and effect would be unreasonable, since if it perished after having done an action, then whose action would it have been? Well, since it's established for both of us that the action and the result have a different basis, and that the self has an active role in this, isn't it useless to debate on this point? Okay, so let's see it. What happened is that, first of all, the question that is coming here is, if you tell me that the body and the mind are not the self, okay, and then you tell me that the self actually, at the same time, you tell me that the self is impermanent, you're telling me that the self is not permanent, how come you can experience the result of what you have done 20 years ago? Or in another life? Let's talk about this life because we are conditioned to think others don't exist, so it's easy. Let's say 20 years ago I did something, okay? Is it possible that I experience the result of what I have done 20 years ago today? Yes, right? But when I think about myself 20 years ago, when I think about myself now, was I the same or have changed? When I was a little kid, is the body the same body? The continuity somehow, but the body is not the same. The mind is the same mind? The mind is not the same mind. Okay. So, what this other school is telling us is, how can you say that you experience the result of what you did in the past, and at the same time say that you are impermanent? Because if you are impermanent, the one that was there doesn't exist anymore, the one that did the action. So how can you experience what you have done in the past because you don't exist anymore? The one that did, you don't exist anymore in the present, so it's not the same. Okay? To understand this better, let's look in another way. There is this concept which says, nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. Everything is only transformed. Okay? Which is related to material. Right? Then, from this point of view, I could say, okay, the glass is nothing more than sand, transformed in a different way. I would say that the plastic bottle is how do you say in English? It's oil.
Petrol.
Petrol? Oil, no? Petroleum. Okay? Okay. So, what happens is that, based on this, what happens is that, can I say that this object here is sand transformed? Somehow yes, but it doesn't seem so right? If I come and I say, oh, can you bless me some transformed sand? I need to drink some water. It doesn't fit so well. And then, why then we say sand? What it was before being sand? It was something else, and before being that was something else, and before being that was something else, and we could go to the infinite, right? Okay? So, okay, materia is something that is constantly in transformation. There is no more volume or less volume in the universe. That's what we think of it. So, instead, what makes a glass to be a glass? Does a glass have a beginning of existence and an end of existence? The glass? I'm not asking about the material. I'm asking about the glass.
Yes.
Does the glass have a beginning of existence and an end of existence?
Yes.
If I take now and I throw the glass to the floor and it breaks into hundreds of parts, does the glass still exist? there will be the transformation of the glass into a lot of pieces of glass, but it's not a glass for drinking water, right? So, what happens is that what makes a phenomenon, what makes something to exist as it is, okay, is the fact that there are parts which we call the basis of imputation, and there is a name that is given to it. A name is functions and characteristics that are assigned to that parts. Put it together. So when I say a glass for drinking water, okay, I have given a name, I have attributed a value, and I have given functions to it. In the moment that the basis of imputation, okay, is able to sustain the functions and the characteristics that were attributed to it, it's a correct mode of apprehension, right? Until the moment that the object continues to sustain the functions and characteristics of the name that it was given, it continues to exist. In the moment that the object is not more able to sustain the functions and characteristics of the name given to it, it lacks existence. So if I take a hammer and I hit the glass and it breaks into hundreds of pieces, is the glass still there? No. Why? Because the little pieces of glass in the floor are not able to hold water. Right? So, what is this showing to us? Since the day this glass was made, up to now, did it change or it's exactly the same? It changed, right? That's obvious. Okay? If we look well to it, there is some glass that has some little changes and drawings and something. And actually, when thinking about this, I remember that, I don't remember to whom I was talking, but it's interesting that glass as a material is not seen as a solid material. Because glass changes, it's actually soft somehow. So for example, when we take old glasses, okay, in the old time, now today they are able to do glass with more hot temperatures, so they are more strong. But if we take the old glasses, like if you go to old houses' windows, and after 100 years, whatever, what happens is that if you look well, the part on top becomes thin and the part below becomes thick. With the gravity force, the glass comes down and melts almost. Okay? This is something that happens in a long process, but when we look to the glass, it's happening right now. The glass is moving. Can't you see it? Actually, no. Okay, because we are not able to perceive this level of change, but it's happening change there. Okay? So, what happened, I'm not entering now into the impermanent aspect of things. That's another way that we can go. But the point which I want to get is that the glass has changed in his lifespan, right? Since it was created until now, it has changed. But is it still the same glass? Okay, when I took it in my hand the first time and now, is it the same glass or not? Come on. Yes, no? Why? Because I continue to give the same name and value to it and it continues to sustain it in the same way. Even though it's changed. Before it has more water, now it has less water. Okay? So what happens is that what makes something to continue to exist is not the fact that it's not changing. It's the fact that the name that's being attributed to it can still be sustained. That the name continues the same and the basis of imputation continues to sustain that name. Okay? When we were a child, we had a body and a mind, right? Now we have body-mind. The question is, what are the bases of imputation of the self? Body and mind. Okay? We exist independent of body and mind. Right? So, as I exist independent of body and mind, the body, when I was a little child, and I say, me, mama, me, even I don't say, but I can feel myself. And later when I learned to say a name, okay, we still have an identity of self, right? Even if we go back to our memories, the oldest memories that we can get when you were a little kid, did we have an identity? Yes. There are things that we like. What is the self? Okay, this is another question. What is the functions of the self? Okay, the functions of the glass is hold water. What's the functions of the self? Experience reality and act. Okay? Experience sensations, perceive reality. Experience reality. That's the functions of the self. Okay? So, if we would go back to see, when we were a little kid, there was a self there, which has a body and a mind. Okay? Now, the body of the mind of today, is it the same or it has changed? The same continuity, but am I still a little baby? No, my body has changed in many ways. I became bigger, fatter, whatever. Before I was more cute, now I'm not as cute as I was before, whatever, okay? So, we change in time, right? So what happens is that the body is not anymore the same. The mind is not anymore the same. But we are still there. It's the same me. Okay. So what unites the me, the self of the 20 years ago and the self of now? What unites both of them? The identity of self. Because at that time there was an imputation of the name me, myself, I, that could be sustained. And now, and during this whole process, there continued to be an identity I that was always sustained and continues to be sustained today. That's why it's me.
Is that a part of the brain that's attributing this identity?
No. There is a connection with some part of the brain, but it's not something related only to brain. Because if it was only related to the brain the moment you die, you stop existing.
Or the mind, sorry.
The mind, yes.
But is that impermanent, the part that attributes an identity?
So it's impermanent. Self is impermanent, and the mind that attributes is also impermanent. The way how we attribute changes. There is always a basic imputation of self that continues, it's permanent, but the way how we see ourselves changes also in time. The mental image we have of the self is not always the same. Okay? But still, there is the attribution of self. The way how I see the glass the day I buy it, and the way how I see the glass the day 10 years later, it's different. But still, it's the glass. Okay? So what happens is that what unites us in the different moments of our existence to be one, continuity, is the identity, is the imputation of the name, self. That's why it was me that did whatever I did before, and then that's why it's me that I'm experiencing the results, the same self. Okay? And here comes another point which is important. I'm not going to go deep into it, but it's important that one of the main reasons why there is so much fear of death is because of the fear of not existing anymore. Why? Because if I exist independence of body and mind, and that means no more body, then how can I continue to exist? Right? And if no more body means no more mind, because in our way how we are conditioned, we think that mind is only brain functions. Mind is much more than that, but still. We see like that. So we think, when I die, no more brain functions, no more body, no more me. Okay? But the experience itself, it's said to be similar to the experience when we fall asleep. Imagine how fearful we would be every night if we were not sure of waking up the next morning.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah. And we are right if it happens sometimes because we are not really sure we are going to wake up the next morning. In reality. Okay? But there is like a sort of self-defense system that said, okay, don't worry, we're going to wake up tomorrow. You need to sleep. Okay? But if generally speaking, we were not sure of waking up, then we would be very afraid of falling asleep. Okay? But when we fall asleep, it's very, very similar to the process actually of dying. Falling asleep, it's very similar to the process of death. Okay, I'm not entering into details on that right now, but it's extremely similar. It's the same process with different strengths somehow. Then what happened later, we fall asleep. Then suddenly, boom, black. Then we wake up in a dream. When we wake up in a dream, what happens? There's a whole reality there. A whole psychophysical reality. We have a body, we have a mind, we can listen, we can walk, we can fly, we can eat, we can smell, we can think, we can feel fear, we can be happy, we can have all these things. Okay? So there is a body of the dream body. The body that is experiencing everything in our dream. Is it our physical body? No, it's a dream body. Okay? Which is a subtle level. We can have it in two ways. It can be through the subtle body, or it can be just through the mind, basically, the dream. Then there's the mind. Does the mind during the dream work in the same way as the mind normally during our conceptual thinking and functioning? Not really, right? So it's a more subtle mind. It's a more, how we could say, non-conceptual, subconscious, somehow we could even call it. Okay? So what happens to that is the fact that after the dream, at a certain point, we die in the dream and we are reborn in another dream. How many dreams can we have in one night? More than one? Are the dreams connected, or it can be complete different realities? Complete different. Okay, and how long does it take from one dream to the other? So, it's said that we can have more or less up to 7 dreams a night, which is like the maximum. Okay? Which is basically, which is very, very, very similar to the process of bandha, which is the state between death and rebirth, in which we have these experiences of realities which are basically subtle realities that we experience. But when we are dreaming, even though I have a different body, let's say I dream that I am a dragon, okay? And I experience being a dragon. Is it still me?
No.
In my perception? Yes. I am a dragon. Okay? It's not wearing glasses. It doesn't have, maybe it can be a dragon with 2-headed dragon. Whatever, it's different than me. But is it still me? There's still the identity of self in each and every dream, even though it's a different existence. So that's why that identity of self, we keep it from life to life as we go. Okay? Now, coming back to our point, which is what continues is the identity. Because the aggregates change. The mind is always changing. The body is always changing. But the identity, it's always there. And identity can change also in the sense of the way how we see ourselves. That is also changing. But the base effect of saying I, it's jointing the first, the second, and the third moment, past, present, and future. So, this is here the point which it's giving the answer, which is saying the self is impermanent, but still we can experience past, present relation. Why? Because even though it's not anymore me as I was, it is still me.
The main cause of fear, personally speaking, about death is memory. Is not, for me, continuity is memory. For example, if somebody, this brings me to another question, if somebody has suffers from total amnesia, they don't think they're the same person today as they were yesterday if they haven't. So who's attributing the identity? It's come externally, it's not coming in from the person himself.
What happens is the following. First of all, we do have memories, even though we have a total amnesia. We have subtle memories. Okay? Maybe we don't remember our name, maybe we don't remember the place of our home, but maybe we still remember how to read. We still have other types of memories. In the same way we have memories from life to life. Now we stop here because Rinpoche has just arrived. Okay? And so then tomorrow we will have the last day of conclusion about this chapter. And maybe we are able at least to go up to the end of the part which is talking about the correct view of the sun. Okay?